So every offseason, I like to make a video where I talk about 15 NBA stars that could get traded over the upcoming summer. But those guys that could get traded are not always a definite. Here today, I want to give you guys 15 players that I think will be traded this offseason. So if I don't get 10 of these right, I'm going to consider this an L. Because when you take into account team timelines, financial structures, or maybe just lack of playing time, I think it makes sense for all of these guys to get moved this offseason. So the first player I'm going to talk about, Jrue Holiday of the Boston Celtics. This just makes way too much sense right now. And I think we've actually gotten Jrue Holiday's value to go up a little bit since the season ended. The Boston Celtics at the moment are a second apron team, so they're going to have a ton of restrictions if they don't shed a ton of money this offseason. And it makes sense to trade away Jrue Holiday, who was owed $32 million next year, $34.8 million in 2027, and $37 million in 2028. Given that Jrue Holiday is 35 years old, but he's still a really good defender, he's still a solid three-point shooter, and he was banged up at times last year for Boston. So if he could be fully healthy, he's somebody that can elevate a team that is maybe on the outskirts of a conference finals that can maybe make them a finals contender. So I think there'd be a plethora of teams lining up for Jrue Holiday this offseason. Could the Clippers get involved? Could the Dallas Mavericks get involved? Or maybe if a team strikes out on a big fish this offseason, they could pivot to Boston and try to get Jrue Holiday. Heck, I could even see the Sacramento Kings try to get Jrue, just because it's not really going to cost you a lot given his contract, and Boston has no leverage. You need to help them get under the salary cap, and Jrue Holiday is a good player, but with Jason Tatum most likely missing most of next year's season, Jaylen Brown had a major offseason surgery, it makes sense for Jrue to get traded, and I would almost say that there's a 100% guarantee that he is moved this offseason, but I can never say always it's going to happen, so I'll say 99.9%. And I just briefly mentioned that the Sacramento Kings could go after Jrue Holiday. Well, I think that they're going to make a notable trade this offseason. I can't say it's a guarantee that Zach LaVine or Keegan Murray or Domantas Sabonis are going to get moved, so I'm going to go with Demar Derozan. It just makes way too much sense. You could also give a shout to Malik Monk, who may have a little bit more value than Demar Derozan, but we just saw Demar Derozan get paired up with Zach LaVine yet again. These guys have been on the same team for 4 years in a row now, and they have 0 playoff wins to show for it. DeMar DeRozan last year signed with the Sacramento Kings, and then offseason signed and trade with the San Antonio Spurs and the Chicago Bulls, so he is owed $24.5 million next year and $25.7 million in 2027. The Sacramento Kings do own their first round pick in next year's draft, so they do have an out if they aren't performing up to standards next year. DeRozan is also 35 years old, and I think some teams would want to acquire DeMar DeRozan. Could Phoenix look to buy low on DeMar DeRozan since they don't have their first round pick next year for any trades they can make this offseason? Milwaukee doesn't have their first round pick next year. Could they go after DeMar DeRozan, who shouldn't cost too much? So I could definitely see DeRozan getting moved. He definitely has some value on the market. There are far worse contracts out there than 2 years, $50 million. And I think the Sacramento Kings have to do some type of shakeup this offseason. Mike Brown is no longer here. De'Aaron Fox is no longer here. Monte McNair is no longer here. They can't trot out the same roster in 2026 and expect different results. He was already traded once this year. That got rescinded. So I have to think Mark Williams is also going to get traded this offseason. Mark Williams was injured for the 3rd straight year. He missed a ton of time to start off year number 3, but he did finish the season on a strong note. He played in 44 games, averaged 26 minutes a night, shot 60% from the field, and averaged 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 1.2 blocks a night. He's not an elite rim protector, or at least right now, but if Mark Williams can string together a couple healthy seasons in a row, he could definitely become more consistent on that end of the floor. I think a lot of teams would be lining up to acquire Mark Williams this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers tried doing it again. If Mark Williams and his agent and the Charlotte Hornets front office are way too apart on a rookie extension, it's going to make a lot of sense for him to get moved, especially if they want to draft a Kaman Maliwatch or Derek Queen on the night of the NBA draft. And another player that was technically traded last year in that Mark Williams deal before it got rescinded, Dalton Connect. I think he's going to be traded this offseason as well. With LeBron James getting up there in age at 41 years old, the Lakers have a little bit of pressure to compete next year, and Dalton Connect is 24 years old. He's entering year 2 of that rookie contract. He's not a great defender out there, but you know what he is, and teams are going to be looking for shooting this offseason. I think the Lakers can leverage Dalton Connect in a trade that can net them back a rim protector. If it's a Nick Claxton, maybe it's a Mark Williams again, or somebody else on the market. Dalton Connect is one of their best assets they have, since they don't want to trade any of their veteran players right now or any future draft capital if they don't have to. I think the Utah Jazz should make some type of moves this offseason. I've been saying for the last year and a half they should trade their veterans. I would also say Lauri Markkanen, but the contract is so massive, I can't put a guarantee he gets moved. So I have to think that Colin Sexton is going to get traded this offseason. He's entering the last year of his current deal at $19.1 million, so it's definitely a movable contract. He's put together a couple good shooting years in Utah. He has has still a very good competitive motor, and I'd like to see a team trying to compete next year go out and get Colin Sexton. The Jazz have Keontae George and Isaiah Collier, and there's a good chance they end up with a Con Knipple, VJ Edgecombe, or Trey Johnson on the night of the NBA draft. You could also say Jordan Clarkson should get moved this offseason, John Collins on a sign and trade, and Larry Markkinen, but I think the one that has one of the more movable contracts that could net back Utah a first-round pick that would be appealing to contending teams, that's got to be Colin Sexton. I think he finally gets moved in the last year of his deal in the 2025 offseason. I've already mentioned one Williams in this video and Mark Williams. Let's talk about another one. Time Lord Robert Williams of the Portland Trailblazers. I think the Trailblazers can look to trade some of their veterans this offseason, but DeAndre Ayton is making over $30 million a year. Jeremy Grant has multiple years left at $30 million a year, and Anthony Simons does seem beloved by the front office, so I think all signs are pointing to Robert Williams being moved. He's making $13.2 million next year, and unlike Mark Williams, he shouldn't cost you a first-round pick. I'm sure multiple seconds can get this done because this can allow more playing time for Donovan Clingan next year, especially if Portland drafts somebody in the front court. You could definitely trade Robert Williams. The Lakers, who I just mentioned, would go after him. Plenty of teams need big man depth as well, and I think it'd be very easy to move Robert Williams now that he's in the final year of this contract. I feel like the Dallas Mavericks are going to make some type of trade this offseason if they want to go out and add a point guard or two, and I believe that PJ Washington is going to get traded because Daniel Gafford is somebody that could end up being a free agent in 2026, but Daniel Gafford is a really talented player, and Anthony Davis is far from consistently available, so they may want all the big man depth they can get with AD, Lively, and Gafford. All three of those guys were banged up at different times last year, and with the Dallas Mavericks having the #1 overall pick, who's presumably going to be Cooper Flagg, they don't really need PJ Washington as much as they did a year ago. Plenty of wings are currently in Dallas, and like Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington could be a free agent after this regular season. He could definitely net back Dallas a first-round pick or a different caliber point guard. I think it'd be easy to move him, and after getting Cooper Flagg, I think it would be best for PJ Washington to get more minutes on a different team still trying to contend next year. I don't think the Chicago Bulls would be interested in PJ Washington, so maybe this could be a 3-team deal because I think Dallas could be interested in my next player that I'm going to talk about, Lonzo Ball. The Bulls have to move Lonzo Ball this offseason. I assume that they're going to re-sign Josh Giddey. I can't say with certainty that they're going to move Kobe White or Ayo Dosunmu. You could maybe mention Nikola Vucevic, but Lonzo Ball should be very easy to move for Chicago this offseason. They re-signed him to a 2-year deal worth $20 million, which kicks in next year, so $10 million per year, and it's non-guaranteed in year 2. That has a team option of $10 million, so that is a team-favorable contract. I think the Dallas Mavericks could look to get Lonzo Ball as a bridge point guard until Kyrie Irving gets back. Maybe the Milwaukee Bucks want to get Lonzo Ball. Maybe Miami wants to get Lonzo Ball as well. Chicago should definitely trade him this offseason, especially if they can get somehow a late first-round pick for him if Phoenix or the Clippers are calling. Can the Brooklyn Nets please trade Cam Johnson? They have to trade him this offseason, right? Since they're not getting a Cooper Flagg or a Dylan Harper in the 2025 NBA draft, I don't think that they're going to try to half contend next year or just try to be more competitive. I think they're going to still go throughout this rebuild with all the draft capital they have and try to get as many young assets as possible. And if a team misses out on a Kevin Durant type deal, they could pivot to Cam Johnson, who would go for a lot less. Cam Johnson is owed $20 million in 2026 and $22.5 million in 2027. By then, he'll be 31 years old, so I don't think he's going to command too much money on his next extension. And Johnson was phenomenal last year in 2025. I want to see some team that needs shooting to go after Cam Johnson this offseason, because what purpose does he serve right now on this version of the Brooklyn Nets? They need to lose more games next year if they want to have the best chance at getting a Darren Peterson, a Cameron Boozer, or an AJ DeBanza. There's been reports that the Cleveland Cavaliers want to bring back Ty Jerome, and if they want to do that this offseason, they have to get out of the second apron. So I think all signs are pointing to them moving Isaac Okoro, the former 5th overall pick, back in the 2020 draft. I don't think they're going to move Jared Allen or Darius Garland. They definitely could, but I think there's a better likelihood of Isaac Okoro getting moved. And he's very physical on both ends of the floor, and I think some teams would definitely be lining up for Isaac Okoro. Maybe Cleveland could even get a first-round pick or a first-round swap since they don't own a lot of draft capital from the Donovan Mitchell and DeAndre Hunter trades. They can recoup a little bit of that in an Isaac Okoro deal, or at least just get some cap relief so they can bring back Ty Jerome, who was one of the best backup point guards in the league last year. Since the Orlando Magic just went out and traded for Desmond Bane, they're going to be a second apron team very soon, especially after that next Paolo Banchero extension kicks in after the 2026 season. They're going to decline a bunch of team options this offseason, but I believe there would be some type of market for Jonathan Isaac. And Jonathan Isaac is a solid defender last year. He still doesn't look like what he used to back when he was breaking out in that 2020 season, unfortunately. But if they're looking to shed some cap so they can duck the second apron in a year, Jonathan Isaac is most likely going to get moved this offseason. I think he's a fascinating guy to look at this offseason, but I believe Julius Randle is going to get traded in some way, shape, or form, because Julius Randle has a player option of $31 million. And if you look look at what Julius Randle did in the playoffs last year, he's definitely worth at least that amount on a multi-year deal. In the second round against the Golden State Warriors, he averaged 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists, and that was pretty much the best playoff series of his career after having a very solid round 1 as well. Julius Randle is 30 years old. This is probably going to be the last large deal of his career, so if him and Minnesota cannot work out an extension in some way, shape, or form, a lot of teams don't have cap space. I believe he's going to get traded in some type of sign and trade deal. Maybe he's going to end up going to a smaller market team that is willing to pay Julius Randle to elevate them from a non-playoff team to a playoff team. I just can't see Minnesota committing long-term money to Randle right now. I feel like we would have had a good inkling that was going to happen because I think they're more worried about Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and maybe making a different, larger trade. A shocking one here is going to be Norman Powell of the LA Clippers, who's surprisingly been in a ton of rumors this offseason. Powell is 32 years old, and he's entering the last year of his current deal. He's only making $20 million, so it's a super tradable contract as well, and the LA Clippers have a little bit more draft capital to work with in 2031 and 2032 to add to Powell to land a bigger name. Powell had the best year of his career in year number 10 and looked like a great complementary scorer next to James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. He was a little bit inconsistent during the playoffs, and I wonder if the Clippers are going to try to go all in around Kawhi and Harden before they end up retiring and trading Powell and multiple draft picks for a larger name. And I'm kind of expecting that to happen. That's why he's making this video. I talked about Randle being a sign and trade guy this offseason. I think that could be the same with Jonathan Kuminga of the Golden State Warriors. I feel like all signs are pointing to Kuminga and the Warriors just needing a fresh start from each other. It doesn't feel like he fits well around Draymond, Jimmy Butler, and Steph Curry, and I think Kuminga at 22 years old will definitely have some value on the open market. Maybe he's traded for somebody we are mentioning in this video. Maybe it's a Norman Powell, maybe it's a Cam Johnson or a PJ Washington or a Mark Williams or somebody like that. I think there's a really good chance that Kuminga ends up in a sign and trade this offseason because I can't see him back in Golden State right now. And lastly, somebody that we're all expecting to get traded this offseason, there's almost 100% chance of it happening, and that is Kevin Durant, who's been linked in trade rumors as of late to a bunch of different teams, Miami, San Antonio, or Houston, or maybe even teams like the Knicks, the Raptors, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. We know that it doesn't make sense for the Phoenix Suns to bring back Kevin Durant, who is 36 years old. He's going to be 37 at the start of next year. He's entering the last year of his deal, and last year, Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns couldn't even make the play-in tournament a year after being swept in round 1 by the Minnesota Timberwolves. It is unfortunate to see how bright the Phoenix Suns' future was after the 2021 and 2022 seasons. They lose in the finals in 2021. They were the best regular season team in 2022, and then they traded for Kevin Durant, which I still think they would do in hindsight, but that Bradley Beal trade in the 2023 offseason, that Jusuf Nurkic trade really set this team back. And that is going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I said down below, and you can let me know somebody that you think there's a 100% chance gets traded this offseason, and it would be cool to look back on this video after the offseason finishes. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are not already. We're going to be live for the 2025 NBA draft on round 1 on Wednesday next week and round 2, which is on Thursday, so make sure you're subscribed so you can get notified when I am live. I'll catch you guys there. Peace.